everybody. Welcome to the Abroaders Travel Podcast, your weekly meetup with thousands of entrepreneurs, hustlers, creators, nomads, ninjas, wanderers, and world changers, all seeking to build the skills and connections to live a life without borders. If you want to learn more about what we do or download our entire podcast archive, check out the website, abroaders.com.
Happy Thursday morning and happy 2018. I'm Eric, and this is the Abroaders Travel Podcast, episode number 200 for Thursday, January 4th, 2018. I am going to be rocking this one solo for our bicentennial edition. AJ is just getting back to Abroaders headquarters here in Austin, Texas. I've got quite a bit of news to share with you. We've had quite a bit of news development since we signed off in the middle of December. So I'm going to do my best today to go through the top stories, cover the most important things that have happened, especially things that are time sensitive. Definitely going to have some more stuff to cover next week when AJ gets back. Just a lot of interesting stuff that has happened that's worth talking about. But for today, top stories, more availability for American Airlines flights across the board. However, it's not 100% good news, so I will share some more detail on the wins with the American program and what has changed that we need to watch out for. Also have JetBlue has released a new partner award chart for Hawaiian. This is the first time that the JetBlue program is offering a zone-based award chart. For the most part, up until now, all of their flights have been based on the cost of paid tickets. So this is something new, and it's not an amazing deal in most cases, but there's definitely some interesting opportunities. So I'm going to talk a little bit about that. Iberia is also doing an award sale for travel to Europe that will run you 25,500 miles round trip in economy and 51,000 in business class. It's a pretty long set of travel dates all the way through May, I believe. So I'm going to talk a little bit about that. And then we've also got an IHG Hotels devaluation, a release of Flying Blue promo awards for January, and a couple of pieces of good news related to visas and freedom of travel. Then for today's core content, I'm going to cover the three types of insurance offered by your rewards cards and the key things that you need to know to take advantage of them. I've got a personal story from my trip back to Austin. American destroyed a couple of my bags, and also have a listener question about how insurance could work in the context of a flight delay. So hopefully that'll give you guys a little bit more context to how these benefits can be used in the real world. So that'll be the core content. But first off, let's get into the news and updates. Okay, so first up is that American Airlines has dramatically increased award availability on a ton of different routes, and this is a very recent development. So in the past, American has gotten somewhat of a bad rap with respect to their Saver Award availability. For American's own flights, they offer Saver Awards at the zone-based pricing, and then they've also got Anytime Awards, which can be anywhere from 2 to 4 or 5 times as expensive as a Saver Awards. And so one of the challenges with booking flights with American is that a lot of times there's just not a ton of Saver Award availability. And so there's been a major change here at the end of December that it looks like just a lot of different routes, including a bunch of domestic routes, have opened up big time with award availability. Now I've got a post that I want to share with you guys that'll be in the show notes. It's written by JT Genter from The Points Guy, and he's got some examples, kind of runs through some of the changes that have happened with the award availability. But if you just want to, kind of take a look, if there are tickets that you had tried to book with American Miles in the past and didn't find anything, now is a great time to revisit that award availability. Because I know that, at least a lot of the flights that we've checked recently, ones that we've been monitoring for the booking service and so forth, new options have opened up. Now, as I alluded to at the beginning of the show here, not all of the news is good. I guess the downside, the double-edged sword with this award availability is that a lot of these flights are multiple stop itineraries. Now, I haven't had a chance to really dig into this for international flights, especially the long-haul flights to Europe operated by American, which are really advantageous because we want to avoid British Airways operated flights that have really high fuel surcharges. The example that JT goes through is with flights within the US. I actually also noticed this when I was booking my trip from Detroit back to Austin. There was plenty of Saver availability after Christmas, and I hadn't found anything before Christmas. It looks like these changes kicked in right around the 25th or 26th of December. And so what I was finding as well is that many of the itineraries within the US from Detroit to Austin were 2 or even 3 stop itineraries rather than just one stop, which American has a ton of flights connecting with one stop from Detroit to Austin. And that's sort of the same thing that JT identified in this post. So I think the bottom line here is, number one, much more award availability across the board. This definitely seems to be playing out for international travel, in particular on AA flights to hubs in Europe. So that's really good news. The not so good news is that if you're looking to book tickets within the US as Saver Awards, it may require making 2 stops instead of 1, even if American's selling a bunch of tickets on one-stop routes. Overall, I think this is really good news. Just flat out a lot more opportunity to book flights with AA miles. And we still have the 2 Citibank cards that are hanging around with the 60,000 point offer. So the business card from Citi, the Advantage business card is 60,000 points after 3,000 spent in 90 days, and the personal card as well, same terms. And I really didn't think that was going to last into January, but at least as of recording on the 2nd, those 2 offers are still there. So based on some of this new availability, it may be worth taking another look. And again, if you have flights that you have American miles and hadn't been able to find any availability in the past, now's a great time to take a second look at that and see if this new availability is going to help you out. The next piece of news is that JetBlue has just released a new zone-based award chart for flights to Hawaii on their partner Hawaiian Airlines. Now, for the most part, JetBlue's program, most people are using those points just to book on JetBlue flights. It's a revenue-based program for JetBlue, meaning that the number of miles you're going to need, or JetBlue TrueBlue points that you're going to need, is going to be directly tied to the price of the ticket. So the more expensive the ticket, the more points you're going to need. However, this new pricing chart is for travel on their partner Hawaiian Airlines, and it is a flat zone-based chart. And the interesting thing here is that the U.S. is split into West and East Coast with different prices for travel from California and the West Coast than you would have for the places further east. I'm not 100% sure where the dividing line is exactly here, but it looks like in particular the West Coast could be a little bit better deal than some of the other programs. One of the other airlines that can book on Hawaiian is American, so that's kind of a good head-to-head comparison if you have both types of miles. Overall, I don't think this is a major game changer, but it's great to have some additional options here. And the other kind of sweet spot that I've seen here is that one-way flights within Hawaii, so inter-island flights, are going to be 6,000 TrueBlue points, and so that could potentially be a really good deal as well. Up until now, flights being redeemed through JetBlue's program on Hawaiian were also correlated to the price of the ticket. So at this point, if you've got really expensive flights on Hawaiian, this could be a much better way to redeem points here. So nice to see this, and having those zone-based charts does create some interesting opportunities. So I'll link to a post that's got the new award chart for travel on Hawaiian, so you guys can check that out. And then a quick reminder, JetBlue is a transfer partner of Amex membership rewards. So if you don't have any JetBlue points, you can always get them by transferring over from Amex. The big downside is that Amex is it's not a 1-to-1 ratio. So you're going to have to, I think basically 1,000 points is going to give you 800 JetBlue points. So there's a little bit of loss of value there. And they're also a transfer partner with Citi ThankYou as well. So if you've got some transferable points, you've got the option to use JetBlue JetBlue and book on Hawaiian, I would check out this award chart and certainly take a look at other options to book Hawaiian. Amex also transfers directly to Hawaiian Airlines program, but more options generally means more opportunities, so definitely good news here. Next up, we've got a 25% discount on Avios redemptions through Iberia. Now, I've got a little bit of a love-hate relationship with Iberia. Their website is kind of a disaster. It's one of my least favorite to use to search for flights, but they can be a nice alternative to using British Airways Avios points, because Iberia sometimes will have lower taxes and fees and also has a slightly different distance-based award chart than booking through British Airways Executive Club. So even though these two airlines are very closely related and the Avios program is sort of the same currency overall, the Iberia Plus program has a different award chart, and it also has different taxes and fee rules from the Executive Club program from British Airways. So there's some interesting opportunities here, and this sale is for travel. I think the thing that's most interesting to me about this one is that the travel window is from February 1st to March 23rd, and then again from April 1st until May 15th. And you need to book these flights by January 31st. So you've got the rest of the month here to try and find and book these flights. But with this 25% discount, as I mentioned previously, you've got round trip tickets for roughly 25,000 Avios in economy and about 50,000 Avios in business class. You can book one-way travel, and half price. So you're looking at about 12,750 Avios for a one-way economy and 25,500 for one-way business class. So regardless, this is a really awesome deal if you can find availability. A lot of times for like round trip tickets, you're looking at less than $100. It can be as much as $150 or $200 in taxes and fees, but the fees are super reasonable with the Iberia Plus redemptions. So this is one to absolutely take a look at. You can transfer Amex membership rewards at a 1-to-1 ratio to Iberia. Chase Ultimate Rewards is also now a direct transfer partner. And so those are two ways that you can get points over to the Iberia program. The other thing is that if you have an Avios account, and so this is slightly different than British Airways Executive Club and Iberia Plus. So there's like a sort of a joint Avios account, and it's possible to actually transfer points between Executive Club and Avios, and then from the Avios program over to Iberia Plus. I don't have time to get into that, probably not worth getting into detail on that, but if you do a little Google searching, you can figure it out. It requires having the accounts established for a little while, and you have to have the same address, but it is possible to move points around in there. So if this particular sale will work for your travel plans, if you're able to, spend a little bit more time traveling, up until May 15th, that's starting to get towards high season. And so there could be some great summer trips that can start in mid-May. So definitely worth taking a look at if you're interested in travel to Europe. So we are back to the first of the month, or the beginning of a new month, and so that means that Flying Blue, Air France, and KLM's frequent flyer program has released a new set of promo awards where you can save between 25 and 50% on the price in miles for award redemptions. Now, this set of promo awards is for booking during the month of January, so most of these at least are January 1st through the 31st. There's a couple of these that I think extend into February as far as booking dates. Also, possibility that we've just got some typos on the Flying Blue website. They're not necessarily known for their attention to detail with website. I've got a couple of these date ranges that don't make any sense here, but for the most part, booking dates are going to be in January, and travel dates are going to be from March 1st through April 30th. So this is, we've got in the North American section, it's not super exciting. Both of the destinations are in Canada. Canada and Western Canada. So we've got Edmonton and Calgary, discounted business class. So that'll make it 46,875 miles one way, or about 94,000 round trip. So Edmonton and Calgary for business class, you've got the promo award. The sector that I think is most valuable for this set of promo awards is definitely the Asia and Middle East. There's quite a few different options. In particular, if you're headed to Asia from Europe, this could be a really good opportunity. Ho Chi Minh City in Vietnam, which is definitely a backpacker and location-independent entrepreneur hub in Southeast Asia. There's 40,000 miles for a one-way in premium economy, and Singapore is also on the list for discounts for premium economy. It's a higher award price because it's in a different region than Vietnam, but Singapore is 60,000 miles one way for premium economy. Both of those kind of grab my attention. There's also a heavily discounted one for Mumbai, and Cairo and Tehran are also on the list for promo awards. So some interesting ones for the Middle East and Asia. And if you can position yourself to Canada, you can potentially get a really nice flight to either Paris or Amsterdam, booking out of Edmonton and Calgary. So the last piece of program-related news is that we've got a devaluation that's just been announced for the IHG Hotel Group. So they've just basically repriced a bunch of different properties for 2018. Now, the interesting thing here is that these changes are not in effect, but as far as, at least at the time of recording, we don't have a date that this is going to take effect. So by the time the show goes out, this may have already been released, but at the moment, they've just basically listed the properties that are going to be changing the price. And so IHG's got about 5,000 properties worldwide, and about 500 of the properties are changing price or increasing price in this case. So it's about 10% of their total portfolio. You got about 500 hotels that are going up by either 5,000 or 10,000 points, and about 200 hotels that are going down by 5,000 points a night. So it's not all bad news, but more properties substantially are going up in price than down. And they've also created a new category at the top. So up until now, the highest points redemption rate was a 60,000 point per night price. And it looks like they're now going to be going up to 70,000 points per night at some of their most elite properties. Most of these are Intercontinentals. So one that I've actually personally visited is the Intercontinental in Hong Kong, which is an amazing hotel. And just there's a lot of really cool properties here. And so, at the moment, these are still at their 2017 level. And so we don't know when this is going to kick in. But if you're thinking about booking an IHG hotel stay, you definitely want to do that ASAP. And the nice thing is that you can always cancel these reservations. It's either 24 or 48 hours before check-in that you can refund those points redemptions. So if you've got even just a speculative booking that you think there's a good chance that you might want this hotel on these nights, now's the time to do it with IHG, especially for some of these properties that are going to be going up in value or up in price. So I will post a link that's got the list of the hotels that are going to be changing and give you all the info to check it out on IHG's site. And we'll let you guys know once we figure out what the deadline is going to be for those changes to take effect. All right, so the last two news items are both good news. The first one is that a 6-day transit without visa is now going to be available in Beijing. So China has offered a 72-hour transit without a visa program for select cities for quite some time. And in 2016, they introduced this 144-hour or 6-day transit without visa program for Shanghai, Hangzhou, and Nanjing. And so this was something that has just kind of been waiting to be expanded, but now it looks like Beijing's capital airport is going to be eligible. There are 53 countries of which citizens are eligible for this 6-day transit without a visa. It includes the United States and most of Western Europe, it looks like, a lot of Schengen countries. So I'll link to the post here, but lots of folks, anybody with a U.S. passport is going to be eligible for this. And the Chinese visa can be a pretty decent expense. I think to get the 10-year visa is at least $200 or $300. And so if you want to just dip your foot in the water and spend a little bit of time in China, but maybe 72 hours wasn't going to be enough, this 444-hour 6-day transit visa could be the ticket here. Give you a chance to see Beijing and a couple of other different cities and spend a bit more time. So I've got a link to a post on that. The next item is that the U.S. and Turkey visa dispute has been resolved. So we reported on this a few months back. I guess it was in October that Turkey just stopped issuing visas to U.S. travelers. This was in response to some stuff by the U.S. where we were not issuing U.S. visas to Turkish citizens. A little bit of reciprocity here. And so they boxed out the American citizens. And so a lot of people were definitely concerned about this. We had to rebook quite a few flights with the booking service. Transit was allowed in the intervening time, but if you were stuck there, you were not allowed to leave the airport. So if something happened with a canceled flight. And so it looks like this is now possible for an e-visa process that you can get a multiple entry visa for about $20. And this is something that you can apply for online. And so I've got a link to a post that runs you through the process. But if you've been holding off and waiting for your chance to visit Turkey, it looks like everything's been cleared up and you should be able to get that visa successfully processed and pretty quickly so that you can get your e-visa, it looks like immediately, and be able to book your flights and travel to Turkey. Okay, time to get to the core content for today's episode. Now, as a quick clarification, I said that I was going to cover the 3 types of credit card insurance. But today, I really want to focus on 3 travel-related insurance policies. But there are quite a few other types of insurance offered on most rewards cards. So the 3 that I want to talk about today are trip delay, interruption, or cancellation insurance. That's number 1. Lost or damaged luggage insurance and delayed luggage insurance. The other major types of insurance are for things like car rentals or protections on things that you buy, like an extended warranty or purchase protection in case you drop your new iPhone in the sink. But we're going to leave those for another day. So my goal here is to provide some context from my recent experience and help you avoid some mistakes that are very easy to make thanks to all the fine print that is in your credit card agreement. And like any good story, this is going to have a little bit of a cliffhanger since I'm still in the process of filing my claim, but I've done my best to map out some of the landmines and hopefully help you guys avoid them and just build some awareness about what the benefits are and what things you want to consider when choosing which card to pay for flights and when making sure that you dot all your I's and cross all your T's if you ever need to file a claim. So the main themes here are going to come back to who is covered under your insurance policy with your credit card, what are the coverage limits or the coverage amounts, and what are the criteria that are required for the coverage to be in effect or to be triggered, and then what reports need to be filed and what documents are you going to need. So I guess I'll start with the context of my story. As I said at the top of the show, American kind of destroyed some of my luggage. I had spent family time home for Christmas in Detroit, and I'm not really used to checking bags. Most of the time I just travel with a carry-on. So this was kind of a new situation, and I ended up borrowing a big and pretty nice roller bag that belonged to my little sister. And so the first place that you can make a mistake is when you pay for your flight. And so in my case, this is the $5.60 in taxes and fees on my award ticket. So the card that you use to pay for travel even if it's just the taxes, is what determines who is providing your insurance and who you're going to end up dealing with if there's a problem. So I have the American Airlines card from Citibank, which I mentioned earlier in the show, and that offers free checked bags on domestic flights and also priority boarding. And both of those came in super handy on our flight back from Detroit to Austin. The flights were super crowded. Priority boarding is really nice because you get in before at least half of the people. And so if the overhead bins are restricted or not, there's not going to be much space, it can be a really big benefit. So I really wanted those two benefits, especially because the free checked bag, I was traveling with my wife, Gabi, and so it's one free bag per passenger. And so that ended up saving us $50. But the important thing to know is that you don't actually need to pay for your flight with the Citi co-branded American card to get those benefits. Now, just for reference, the Citi AA card actually has some very solid travel insurance as well. So if I had used that card, I would have still been covered for what I can, I guess, politely call baggage destruction. But the reason I use my Chase Sapphire Reserve over the Citi card has to do with just sort of the benefit amount on some of the other things that could have happened. So I think the thing that kind of made my choice easy with the Sapphire Reserve is that baggage delay is one of the things that comes up the most often. It's less likely that your bags are going to get destroyed than it is that your bags are just going to be late. And so I chose the Chase card because I get $100 per day per person, up to $500 or up to 5 days worth of coverage with the Sapphire Reserve. And the Citi card is just a maximum of $100 per person if your bags are delayed. So that's, I guess, sort of one first step is you want to compare the cards that you have and see where the coverage is different. And that difference could be in the amount of coverage. It could be in the criteria that triggers the coverage. And I'll come back to that at the end here. But, just kind of having a rough idea of where the differences are. And then the other really important one is who is actually covered under the policy. Okay, so back to Austin Bergstrom Airport. I'm at the bottom of the conveyor belt and about to find out that they had a trash compactor load my bags into the plane. And American was kind enough to provide me with 2 different types of damage so that I could go through the full gambit of the claims process and share that with you guys. So first off, my backpack rolled off the conveyor belt and it was soaking wet, smelling quite a bit like the red wine I had been given for Christmas and jingling around with a bunch of broken glass. And so that one is kind of a combo where most of this checked bag or luggage coverage will not only cover damage to the bag itself, but also damage to items that are within the bag or potentially things that are stolen from your bag, which is, can be a real issue as well. So with respect to the luggage insurance, the couple of things that you want to pay attention to for the lost luggage or stolen luggage is how much coverage you have per bag and per person. If you have really nice luggage, maybe $400 or $500 spinner bags, it can be important to make sure that you've got enough coverage that could replace those bags if they go missing completely. And then also, obviously, you want to put any big valuables in your carry-on luggage, and not, check things that potentially have high value that could get stolen. But, if a bag goes missing, there could be hundreds, if not thousands of dollars of clothes in there. So those are a couple of things. Obviously, my red wine, not super expensive, but the fact that it broke the wine and just all this red wine over the bag. So I kind of had a claim that was going to involve damaged items inside the bag and also a damaged bag itself. And the second bag, my borrowed roller bag, which was a pretty nice piece of luggage, I didn't actually notice that problem until I started trying to wheel through the crowd and realized that the wheels were now sticking out at like a 45-degree angle. And so what I ended up finding out is that the frame of the bag had been crushed. And so the metal support that holds the wheels the right distance apart had been broken. And so that's why it wasn't working. And so this is where I made my first mistake. The correct move here would have been to go directly to the American Airlines baggage claim office and file a report with them. Now, as it turns out, it only took me about 10 minutes to do that. But I had to drive back to the airport after I got home and talked with Chase and found out that this was required. And that's something that after doing some more research, I found out is almost always required with all of these insurances across the board, is that you need to file a claim with your common carrier or your airline or company that's providing transport. You need to file a claim with them first, and typically your credit card will cover whatever they don't. So if the airline gives you $100 and your total loss was $500, the bank will generally give you the difference, or $400 in that particular case. So I guess the first mistake that I made here is not realizing that I was going to need a claim form from American, or kind of knowing that maybe I would need that, but thinking I could do it online. And the airline requires that you have the bags physically present to show them so that they can take that claim. So I ended up having to take an extra trip to the airport. Other documentation that was necessary for me is a copy of my itinerary, so the flights, dates, and times, and a copy of the credit card statement showing that I had actually purchased those flights, or in this case, the $5.60 per person for the taxes and fees on the award ticket on that card, because that's a criteria that activates those that insurance policy. So another tip here is to just always hang on to your boarding passes and keep your original itinerary and any copies of updates if you change or modify that itinerary, because sometimes those documents have critical information that you're going to need to submit in a claim. Like one example is a ticket number. A lot of times you'll need your record locator, but there's also a ticket number. And in this particular case, I had to include that. And that was one thing where I was going back through, and because I had originally booked this ticket for January 4th, that was the only itinerary that I could find. So I didn't save a copy of my updated itinerary. And I was lucky because I did save my boarding passes. So I had proof that I had actually been on that flight, boarded the flight that was 4 days earlier. But if you make changes to your itinerary, you want to keep probably the original too, but you want to make sure you keep any copies of the updates, because if I had thrown away those boarding passes, at the very least I would have had to spend time on the phone with American. For whatever reason, after the flight, my record locator wasn't pulling up the itinerary. So bottom line, just keep all of that information until you know that you're not going to need to file any sort of claim for your trip. Okay, so after filing the initial claim, there's also going to be a deadline to get all that documentation needed to substantiate your claim. So the first step here in my case was to go to the American Airlines office, filed a claim with them. The lady that was working that office, bless her heart, was just a wonderful person. And, I think one thing to just like as a takeaway from me is, from my experience, is you always want to make sure that you're not taking out your frustration about the situation on the people that are trying to help you solve it. Sometimes those people are not nearly as friendly or as nice or as helpful. So it can be hard, take some discipline to do that, but you want those people on your side. And a lot of times what they can put in the report as far as substantiating the damage. One of the things that they asked me about was the value of my bags, the things that were in it. So you want to pay attention to that claims process and be as friendly as you can, because even if the airline isn't going to end up doing anything to resolve your claim, I'm fully expecting to get either a denial from American or have them offer me some meager compensation that doesn't come close to covering the cost of replacing this bag that I borrowed. But having them take down the full report and doing a comprehensive job is probably going to be really important to getting the full value that I need with the credit card claim. So after filing the claim with American, I went online and filed my claim with Chase. And so that required having a copy of the claim with American to upload. It also required the other things that I mentioned. So the copy of the itinerary, the credit card statement, and be aware there's typically a very tight deadline to make that initial claim with the airline, especially for things like lost or damaged bags. You're not going to be able to file a claim with the airline 2 weeks later saying, oh, by the way, they lost my bag. So you want to know those deadlines. And if something happens, it might be as tight as 24 to 48 hours. So in this case, I went back to the airport the next day and, just had to, they give you a little bit of time in case you don't notice the damage, but those can be very tight. And then after you filed the initial claim with the airline and filed your claim with the bank or the credit card company, at that point, you're also going to have a deadline that's a little bit longer, typically 20 to 60 days to get all the documentation in order. So currently I am waiting to hear back from the claims examiner. I've done a couple of other somewhat similar claims. More often in the past, I've had one for delayed baggage and so forth. But a lot of times you will get a phone call and talk with the claims examiner. Overall, so far, if you had eliminated the fact that I drove back to the airport, this is a pretty fast process. It's only taken about 25 minutes of time. So this is something that you can do relatively efficiently if you keep your documents organized. And so I will get back to you guys and let you know how this goes and hopefully have an update in the next week or two to talk about how this ended up going. Before I sign off, though, I wanted to share one additional story that came in as an email, a listener question that relates to a different type of insurance. And so this was from one of our booking clients. We'll call him Tom for now, not the real name, but I want to get permission before I share too much in terms of this experience. But Tom booked a flight for himself and his girlfriend using British Airways Avios miles, and his flight was delayed overnight. And so he ended up having to purchase a $250 paid ticket to get his girlfriend back to their final destination because the airline was taking too long to get them rebooked. And so this case, I guess, just highlights another potential mistake that you can make at the time of booking. And so some cards limit coverage to your spouse and immediate family members. And other cards are going to allow for traveling companions that you don't actually necessarily need to be related to or married to. And so you want to pay attention to what those criteria are. And then the other thing that applies to travel delay insurance is just the criteria that makes you eligible for coverage to kick in. And so even if you had taken out the fact that Tom would have wanted to choose a card that would provide coverage for a companion that wasn't his spouse, the other thing to be aware of here is that, for example, the Citi Prestige card, if your flight is delayed by 3 hours or more, you get the coverage based on that. With some other cards like the Sapphire Reserve, it triggers after 6 hours or if you have to stay overnight. And with the Sapphire Preferred, it's 12 hours or an overnight. So there can be a big difference. And if all other things are equal or the things that are important to you are equal, you probably want to choose a card that has either better coverage criteria or potentially higher payout amounts. So I guess the bottom line here, this can sound like a lot of work, but the main thing is to really get comfortable with the coverage that comes with one or more of your better rewards cards. I think that the insurance, for sure, the insurance on the Citi Prestige and the Sapphire Reserve are very good, but there are a lot of other cards like the American Airlines, the AA Citi co-branded card has some very good insurance. Some of them have a little bit longer criteria, but the Citi AA card is actually one that covers travel companions, not including spouse, that don't need to be spouse or immediate family members. So know the benefits for a couple of your cards, and just get comfortable with a couple of those and make sure that you're using a card that covers the things that you're most concerned about to take advantage of that protection for the trip. And then keep track of those documents. Don't throw away your boarding passes. Don't lose your itinerary. Save a digital copy somewhere in case you need it. All right, that's going to do it for this week's show. Thanks very much for being with me for episode number 200. You can find links and notes for today's show at broaders.com/200, and I will see you next Thursday.
Hey, Broaders, don't be shy. Hop over to the website and join our email list for exclusive travel hacking content. If you like what we're up to, the best way you can support the show is by leaving us a 5-star review on iTunes. Lastly, we would love to hear from you, so send your show feedback to Eric or AJ at abroaders.com. We will see you next week.